Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of my podcast. Today's podcast is called Checklist, and as usual, I will begin this podcast with a quote. Any idea, plan, or purpose may be placed in the mind through repetition of thought. And that's a quote by Napoleon Hill. Lists have always been a common theme throughout the episodes of my podcast, and it's for a good reason. I've always used lists to help me accomplish things, even at an early age before I got involved in the military. For some reason, having something physical that I could, look at and physically mark my progress or help me see that I'm making progress was always something that I saw as helpful from a young age on up. Whether while conducting flight training, to military tasks, or a host of other activities, checklists became and still are a major aspect of my life. Like I said previously, I always created lists when I was younger. Like, this is my to-do list for the day, or, these are the tasks that my mom told me to do, or whatever. And then when I got in the military, CAP, they would give us, tasks that we had to do. First you got to do this, then you got to do this, then you have to do that. And I would write that down. And again, I would use that as a rule and guide for how I would get through progression in rank or a mission that we had or whatever it may be. And that continued to be the case as I went through high school, college, and ultimately got into the actual military, where checklists are a major part of what we do. You need to be writing things down, having a piece of paper. You need to be keeping track of where you are, what you're doing. And there's a whole lot of information that you got to keep track of. And lists are a great way to do that. Even from the most minuscule and small thing as, what you need to do to get checked into a unit, to one of the biggest tasks like your mission for an operation, or the type of gear that you need, or whatever. I mean, you can make a list for everything. And, I feel that lists are extremely helpful, and a lot of other people feel that lists are extremely helpful. Through checklists or creating lists, I have learned how to prioritize tasks, keep track of what needs to be completed, measure my progress, and create a system of checks and balances. Like, if I see that, in prioritizing my task, that this task needs to be done before another, and I kind of get ahead of myself, I can rein myself back in and say, hey, you need to complete A before you jump to B, because that's just the progression of how you'll get to success instead of just trying to, get ahead of the wheel. So if you speak to anyone who is successful, they will say that a key to having success or experiencing success in your life is creating a schedule, which is relatively some type of checklist that you'll have for your day, for your life, whatever it may be. Again, it can be on such a small scale as what you have planned on your day-to-day operations, like what you want to get done from the time you wake up to the time you get sleep to go to bed. And it can be as big as, hey, this is my 5-year plan. These are the marks that I need to hit so that I can be on track in 5 years and get to where I want to be. So when I'm conducting research and I find a list that a successful person puts together, I try to store it both mentally and physically somehow, whether that's digitally or writing it down, and try to use it as a rule and guide for my journey through life. I know throughout the podcast I've made several lists, like these are the 4 agreements, or these are the, principles that guide life, that we're not aware of or that haven't really been taught to us. Or, there's a bunch of lists that I've put in my podcast. And what I've created the list, or not I've created, what I've shared the list with you, my purpose and intent behind doing that was that you could have some type of gauge. Like, you can look at the list, like, these are the 4 keys to success, or these are the 4 principles on how to have a successful day. If you can't have a successful day, or if you aren't experiencing success in your day and you're not getting what you want to get done, or achieving what you want to achieve, then you can look at this list and be like, hey, these are the 4 principles that whoever said they use to get through their day. So maybe if I just mimic them, because success leaves clues, if I just mimic them, maybe I'll be able to start experiencing success in my life and in my day as well. So that's why I share these lists so much. Number one, because they're helpful to me and they're things that I try to implement in my life. And number two, I hope it will do the same for you in helping to create some type of, gauge that you'll be able to look back on and say, okay, I'm missing this. Maybe if I implement this more or focus more on this aspect of, my journey or orienting myself, then maybe I'll experience some success. While listening to a Napoleon Hill podcast, an audio book to be specific, he made mention of 17 principles for personal achievement. And I felt they were very powerful. They're stuff that we've discussed in length, again, because success leaves clues, and it's all interrelated. So successful people all do the same thing in a greater or lesser extent, but it's no like mystery. What they do is they make books, podcasts, YouTube episodes. They got documents and articles on the internet. Successful people love to share how they became successful. And if you look at a lot of these lists or a lot of, their talks or you look at their stories, a lot of their stories, their talks, their lists have a lot in common because, if we can mold ourselves to their way of thinking, if we can, make these lists and these aspects of their success a part of our life, I believe that we can achieve success as well. And it's a journey, it's not a destination. So I make this list and the list before this one in hopes that we can have some type of rule and guide for us to be successful. And I'm also trying to implement and practice these lists on a daily basis. Just check them off as I go down the list. Now, some of them I have implemented on a daily basis. Some of them I am disciplined in executing more often than not. And then others I need to work on. And that's everybody. You're not going to be perfect at everything and everything's not going to go your way. But again, it's about the journey, not the destination. So let's get to this list. The first one is definiteness of purpose. So you need to be focused in where you're going. You need to be 100% in on what you're doing. Like, you have to feel like you're doing it for the right reasons. You're going in the right direction. This purpose is worthy of chasing. This goal is worthy of achieving. If you don't feel like your cause is worthy of fighting for, of sacrificing for, then why are you doing it? What's the point? And that's number one on the list for good reason, because if you don't have purpose, if you don't have a mission, if you don't have a goal, then everything else kind of just falls by the wayside, because what's the point? You don't really have anything to look up to, any type of hope to keep you going through those dark times, those valleys that we talk about that will often, be experienced throughout your journey, because you can't always be on the mountaintop. Sometimes you got to go in the valley. And there's a lot of lessons down there in the valley. So the next one is Mastermind Alliance. And throughout these 17 tasks that I'll be listing, most of them are stuff that we are aware of or can easily, grasp the concept of. But there are some things that are kind of ambiguous or need to be defined further. So I just, implemented a little bit of what the article said to define what he meant by the statement, and Mastermind Alliance is one of them. So the mastermind principle consists of an alliance of two or more minds working in perfect harmony for the attainment of a common definite objective. Success does not come without cooperation of others. If you think you're going to go far, if you think you're going to accomplish a goal, you can't do it by yourself. You might be able to make it to a certain point by yourself, and it's definitely going to take work on yourself and an internal, chipping away of the trauma and the other things that might halt you in the creation and cultivation of those characteristics that will lead you to success. But ultimately, you're going to come to a fork in the road where you're going to need a team. And a team in order to be successful, somebody who is better at something than you, something that may be able to add something to your organization or to your journey, because going it by yourself it just can't be done. If you look at any organization, they're more powerful as a team than any one individual. No one individual brings everything to the table. It's a team effort, and that team is what's going to get you through to the end. Applied faith, again, have that definiteness of purpose, and then have faith that you're going the right way, you're making the right decisions, you're attempting to be the right person that you could possibly be in order to make this thing happen. Going the extra mile. The man who does more than he is paid for will soon be paid more than he does. You got to be willing to put in the extra hours. You got to be willing to stay up late. You got to be willing to put in the extra days, work weekends, work holidays, miss special events, sacrifice seeing certain aspects of life and society that they place importance on that aren't really important. I learned a lot about this in the military when I had to miss, birthdays, and I had to miss anniversaries and holidays and stuff like that. And after a while, it's gotten to a point where that stuff really isn't important to me anymore, because, it's we let society dictate what's important instead of dictating what's important for us, what's important in our life on a case-to-case basis. So what may be important to the next person is not important to me. Holidays, for instance, I don't place a high priority on holidays. It's just another day to me, whereas somebody else might place a high value on holidays. So it's all based on your experience, on your journey, but you got to be willing to put everything in this compartment. And sometimes doing that is what helps put you in that mindset for going the extra mile. Like I'd be more than willing to work overtime on Christmas, or more than willing to work overtime on Thanksgiving, or whatever. And that's just me. I'm not saying that's the way you got to be. I'm saying that's the mindset that I place myself in. I'm willing to work. I don't have no qualms or issues with working on holidays, but that's just because of the journey that I've been on. And I know a lot of people that are like that because of the path that they've taken as well. And I know a lot of people that aren't, that place a high priority on holidays, and it's not a good thing nor a bad thing. It just is, and it is for that person. So the mindset that we place ourselves in makes these tasks easier or harder depending on like our state of resistance. If holidays are important to you, and your boss asks you, hey, could you stay over a few, or could you work on this day, or whatever, you might be missing out on your blessing, or missing out on the opportunity to get ahead, because you have such a resistance to it, because your mind is already set that, hey, this day is a vacation, or hey, this holiday is coming up, or whatever. And again, it's different for different people. It's not good or bad, it just is. So take it in stride. Don't take what I'm saying as a definite, like I definitely got to work Christmas, or I definitely got to work holidays to get ahead, or whatever, and it's not like a ultimatum. You got to take breaks, you got to be with your family, you got to take time for yourself. So it's not all about hard charging all the time. There's also a rest component that's important in it as well. But going the extra mile is definitely a way to achieve success, a way to get ahead. Have a pleasing personality. Nobody wants to work with somebody that's not pleasing. Nobody wants to work with somebody that's a grouch, that's mean, unpleasant, doesn't do their fair share of work. Having a pleasing personality makes everything so much easier. It makes the team more cohesive. It makes just the environment, the energy you bring to the table that much easier. In a situation, you could have so many things that are going wrong, that are out of your control. So you want to try to control as much of what you can. And the energy that you bring to the table, your personality, and the aspects of yourself that you bring to the table are stuff that you can control. So we want to try to have a pleasing personality and bring that positive energy to the organization, to the group. Personal initiative. You want to be able to get stuff done without people telling you that it needs to be done. Again, a major part of that is making lists. If you set out in the beginning of the workday or whatever, hey, these are the 10 days I 10 things I need to get done. And I was listening to a podcast. A guy said he makes a list of like 10 things he needs to get done. And he shoots to have an 80 by the end of the day. 80 meaning he gets at least 8 of those things done, because sometimes you run over, sometimes, you might miss something, overlook something, or whatever have you. Life happens. So he tries to shoot and get an 80, but that's helped him to be successful. So again, creating those lists, prioritizing, executing, being decisive about what you want to do, goal oriented, having the bigger, broader mission in mind of what you're trying to accomplish, helps with that personal initiative. And being driven, self-driven, will help you get everything else done, everything you need to accomplish, completed. A positive mental attitude. Again, that goes with, having that pleasing personality. That's part of it. You got to understand what fights are worth having and what fights are not worth having. Not in a physical aspect, but maybe in a verbal aspect. Like if somebody's being, other than to you, you have to decide, what way should I address this in? Because in the military, we learned how to be tactful. And being tactful is a way of, basically being assertive or standing up for yourself without being disrespectful. It's a very intricate dance. Not everybody's good at being tactful, but those who are, we recognize them and realize who they are. Those leaders who can speak to this person and that person and demand respect or work with those people, even though they're polar opposites or they're different. They're able to, communicate very well. And being tactful is something that we can all, improve upon, or we can all be better in. And it helps, when you're thinking positive and you're not thinking with your ego on the forefront, acting immediately, just jumping, like somebody damages your ego, so now you got to get that back, which never happens. You're just chasing your tail when it comes to the ego. So having a positive mental attitude helps you from making those mistakes of reacting just impulsively, looking at the bright side of everything, being optimistic, and focusing on the lighter side of things as opposed to the darker side, the negative side of things. Enthusiasm. To be enthusiastic, you have to act enthusiastic. You can't just be dull, down in the dumps, always feeling negative about what you're doing and where you're at. If that's how you feel, then you may need to change your occupation, change what you do on a daily basis. Something needs to change, because if you want to live a life that's other than, you have to be other than. You can't get that life and then be like, oh, once I get here, I will be this type of person. You need to become the person that you want to be in order to have the success that you desire. And a part of that is enthusiasm. You have to be enthusiastic about the work that you do. You have to be enthusiastic about your day, about what you're doing throughout your day. The people that you're impacting and influencing, and that you're going to impact and influence. You have to be excited to get up in the morning. Eric Thomas talks about how he beats his alarm clock up because he's, ready for the day. He's driven by purpose, and he knows that he has something bigger in mind and something important that he has to get done. So bringing enthusiasm to the table is a major contribution. It can even be contagious in the fact that it affects your coworkers and the people around you. Somebody might be having a bad day or feel other than, and the enthusiasm you bring to the table might give them that little push or hype them up to help them, get over the humps and hurdles they face in their life. Self-discipline. Self-discipline is huge. We've talked about that over and over again in many, many episodes. Without self-discipline, I feel all of this other stuff is for naught. All of this other stuff is for naught. If self-discipline, I feel, is a subcategory of everything. You could find self-discipline in everything and anything you try to achieve. If you don't have the self-discipline to practice it or execute it on a consistent basis, then you're going to find yourself in a rut. You're going to find yourself stuck. Self-discipline, I feel, is the foundation to everything. Accurate thinking. To me, that means looking at things logically, not looking at things based in emotion, not looking at things, for the moment, looking at things long term, looking at things in a broader scope, a bigger picture. You have to think accurately, not just immediately. Like, hey, how will this help me get ahead immediately? Because then we end up making mistakes. Then we end up making decisions based on, emotion, fear. That's not good. We don't want to do that. We want to think accurately, think logically, think, how can I impact the most people in a positive way? How can I bring more respect, money, prosperity to my organization, to my group? How can I impact the largest amount of people? You want to have your thought process geared towards the right type of thinking. You don't want to be thinking in a negative scope or a negative realm, like, how can I get ahead right now? Or, how can I, just any type of selfish thought, is not accurate thinking, because if you want to achieve success, again, you're going to need to participate in a team or be a part of a team. And that team may be, the greater community or other people helping others. It might just not be immediately the team that's surrounding you, like your accountant, your secretary, and all that stuff. That could be the possibility, but it also might be, your customers, your clients, the people that you're trying to help. So you need to look on a broader scope, look outside yourself, accurately, picture and prioritize things. Controlled attention. What we give our attention to manifest, like what our thoughts become things. So if we just let our attention go left, right, up, down, whatever, and we don't control it or try to, focus it in a direction, then we're not going to be able to be successful. We're not going to be able to get work done. We're not going to be able to properly identify, orient, and achieve our goals ultimately. Teamwork. Again, teamwork makes the dream work. You're not going to be able to do this alone. You're going to have a team to go with you. Adversity and defeat. Many so-called failures represent only a temporary defeat that may prove to be a blessing in disguise. You're going to have adversities. You're going to have defeats. We're going to fail. But there's a lesson in it all. When you fail, you've just identified one way that's not successful of accomplishing your task. So we need to experience that failure, see what we've learned through that failure, and get back on the bike. We can't dwell in it. We can't boo-hoo. We can't, just be down on ourselves. We got to get back after it, because failure is a part of the mission. Failure is, a part of the journey. You want to be successful. You want to carry out your life in a linear fashion, but that's not how life is. There's going to be hills, there's going to be valleys. You're going to make a wrong turn. You're going to get lost, and you're going to have to backtrack and then start from where is right, and then go in the right direction, reorient yourself. So it's just, you got to roll with the blows. You can't just get in a defeated mindset and then stay there. You have to adapt, overcome, and you have to achieve, which we've discussed in other podcasts as well. Creative vision. You have to have imagination. I listen to a lot of podcasts and stuff like that where they talk about, as kids, we had imagination. We felt like we could do everything or anything the world had to offer. And then as we grew up, we lost that creative vision. We lost that imagination, and we kind of get stuck in a rut of where we just do what we feel we have to do, as opposed to do what we want to do and live the life that we want to live or that we desire to live. So having that imagination, being creative, is a major part, again, of success. Health. You got to take care of yourself. Mind, spirit, and body. I'm a big proponent of that trifecta. I believe that's how you achieve the whole person concept, that you got to work on yourself in all three realms. You can't just work on yourself in one or in two maybe and not create that balance. I look at it as a three-legged stool, and they all have to be the same length, because if they're not, you're not going to be able to be stable on that platform like a tripod. So you got to work on your mind, your body, and your spirit. They all got to be healthy. and you got to be trying to get better in every way every day. Create that balance. Budgeting time and money is the next one. That's a big one. That's something that a list can help you do really, really well. If you track money in, money out, if you track, how much time you're going to devote to something. We talked about the Pomodoro technique in another podcast. That's a really great way to do work. I use that a lot when I'm trying to create podcasts or when I'm trying to study or a host of other things that I try to do. But the Pomodoro technique is a very good technique in order to manage your time and to get stuff done and be efficient. And the last one is habits. We have to create an environment of positive habits. If we create a lot of negative habits or bad influence, then they're going to add up. We are what we consistently do. So if you consistently engage in bad habits or negative behaviors, then that's going to be counterproductive to what you're trying to do. We need to change ourselves on the micro as well as the macro. From the biggest thing you can comprehend about yourself to the smallest thing, like what you do every morning, when you wake up, your morning routines, stuff like that. We need to be cognizant of the habits that we consistently partake. So ideally what this list provides is the way to gauge your day-to-day actions. Like I said in the beginning, I just found this list and created this podcast in hopes that you might take notes or you might Google it, because I attached the link in the podcast and I'm going to put it in the show notes. But basically you could say, I'm not achieving the success I want in life. You could just be real with yourself. And then you can look at this podcast episode or these 17 principles of personal achievement by Napoleon Hill and say, what am I not doing on this list? Maybe my habits aren't what they need to be. Maybe I need to revisit that. Or maybe my self-discipline isn't up to par. Or maybe my purpose isn't as clear as it needs to be. And you can go down that list and you can, check off what you need to do. You could put checks by what you already have and then put minuses by what you need to improve or what you need to do. Just something to kind of be a physical representation of, what you need to do in order to get to where you want to go. If something is missing, doesn't feel right, or you feel stuck somewhere along your journey, refer to this or any of the other checklists that we have been given to see if you are accomplishing the task. Again, this is just a way to do a gut check. Like, hey, what am I not doing right? Just like if you go see your best friend or a counselor or, any outlet that you feel will be real with you, that'll be non-biased and that'll be honest with you. A good friend, a parent, a teacher, again, a counselor, somebody who will just sit you down and be like, hey, you're not being your best self. You're participating in this. This is not a behavior that will be conducive to success. Maybe you should look at doing something other than this. Or, hey, I think you'd be more suited for this. Somebody that could give you ideas and ways to look at your life and yourself differently than you look at your life for yourself, because there may be something that you're overlooking or something that you're not paying attention to that could be, crucial to your success and you're achieving that success. So again, I just want to reiterate that this podcast or these lists that we discuss on the podcast, they're not the end all be all. They're not the law. They're not the final say. Go on the internet, do research, Google, YouTube, listen to my podcast, listen to all the other podcasts that are out there. Decide which lists fit your life, which lists will benefit you. And then go down those lists, make check marks, whatever type of mark you want to make, and identify if you have the characteristics or you have the traits of those who have gone before you and have achieved success. And do some self-reflection. And if at the end of the day you don't possess those characteristics or those traits, set out to work on yourself in order to improve upon those characteristics and upon those traits. And ultimately, it should, in the long run, help you achieve the goal that you have set out in your mind.